Trauma can be anything that we have never been able to reconcile with or digest. So they often speak of little t trauma, like everybody experiences, like, sort of a lack of recognition at certain points in our childhood or whatever. But then there's also big T trauma, which is like major abuse or aggression or violence or just horrific things that happen to people that are totally not their fault, and whether as adults or as children, and then you're locked into a certain kind of narrative or body that doesn't want to go anywhere near anything that might replicate that kind of breach of your embodied integrity as a human being. Assault. So how can mindfulness be of value in that kind of circumstance? And I want to make it very clear that mindfulness is not the answer to all life's problems. So like all you need to do is meditate. No, but one element of it is to actually recognize that you're already whole no matter how much trauma you've experienced. We're always looking for things to complete ourselves, but we never actually entertain the notion that maybe we're already complete, and the thought that you're not is the problem. And that's a wonderful place to begin, to take a stand, to take your seat, to open to the actuality of things as they are, no matter how they are, no matter how stressful, no matter how painful, no matter how terrifying. That's all scarring on something that itself holds the scars, but it's not scarred. That's why we're not trying to make ourselves better. What we're doing is we're learning to recognize and realize the nature of wholeness in the form of me, in the form of you. And to let that wholeness, in some sense, radiate in the world, because the world absolutely needs every single one of us to be all we can be. And to realize that each one of us is a flower, a blossom, and that the world needs absolutely every single one of its flowers. Even those flowers that say, well, I'm not so beautiful and I don't have the right numbers of petals, or my colors are a little faded, or nobody cares about this flower and the world doesn't need it. That's just thinking, and it's really wrong thinking. The world needs all its flowers. And as you know, flowers are only here for a very brief time, a lot briefer than the time that we're here. So let's let our flourishing and our flowering really count by understanding the nature of our own hearts and our own minds. So this is where your life becomes the poetry. And one of the reasons that I've been offering poems that I hope you found inspiring from time to time is not because they're nice poems, but because they entrain us into a certain domain of being that is what we call holistic implicational domain. And where poetry is more the language than prose. So here are two of my favorites that I think really capture elements of our suffering and our potential to wake up. So the first is by Emily Dickinson, who is an American poet who lived in Amherst in the 19th century, and it's said never left her house after a certain point because she was disappointed in a love affair. Whatever those historical details, Emily Dickinson did something with the English language that no one has done with the English language either before her or after her. And look out for the personal pronouns, because there are plenty of personal pronouns in this poem, which is, of course, why I'm reciting it. Me, from myself, to banish had I art, impregnable my fortress unto all heart. But since myself assault me, how have I peace except by subjugating consciousness? And since we're mutual monarch, how this be except by abdication, me of me? I'll say it again. Me from myself to banish had I art, impregnable my fortress unto all heart. But since myself assault me, how have I peace except by subjugating consciousness? And since we're mutual monarch, how this be except by abdication, me of me? Now, if you're a sentient being, you should be able to feel that. Abdication, me of me. Ask yourself, how many times have you abdicated? How many times have you stuffed something that was authentic in yourself because you couldn't handle the potential consequences of it coming out, or feeling like you were worthy to even take that stand or place in your own life? And of course, that's true for all of us. That's what the universality of poetry does. It's like she's died 150 years ago, but this lives in a way that enlivens us, okay? Because it has a kind of truth that's truer than true and inclusive enough so that if you're human, this is probably going to move you. And so we all understand how much we've separated from ourselves. So how much do we abdicate? How often do we betray ourselves, not show up in our fullness when we need to because we don't think the universe could handle us this way, or our parents couldn't handle us that way, and we were wounded so deeply. So we carry all these wounds, but the consequences of that wounding are that we're going to subjugate consciousness. That's a choice. But you don't know it's a choice unless you cultivate wakefulness. It'll just be like, what happened? And then you blame everybody else for it. Me from myself to banish had I art, impregnable my fortress to all heart. How many of us have had that experience of like being so badly hurt in love that we never wanted to love again because it was just like too painful? Impregnable. I want my fortress to be impregnable to all heart. I've had enough of that crap. It just hurts too much. But since myself assault me, how have I peace? Because by walling off my heart, I'm assaulting myself. So who's the first victim here? So, and how have I peace? Forget the whole thing. Subjugate consciousness, wall it off, suppress it, repress it. And we do this all the time in ways little and big. Little T trauma, big T trauma. And then does it go away? No, it gnaws at us from the inside. It's unbelievably toxic and destructive, except by subjugating consciousness. But there's a but, and there's a but, and there's a but. And a very important but, a realization. But since we're mutual monarch, in other words, me and myself, the pronouns, who's in charge here? How this be except by abdication, me of me. Can you feel the violence? Can you feel the toxicity of this? And we do it to ourselves and then blame all the rest of the world. That's circumstances. So the choice is really a moment-to-moment existential choice, really, of how do I want to live the life that's mine to live. So here's, in some sense, the antidote to this poem, because this is a very, very forceful poem, and it's a dilemma. It's very real. So here's Derek Walcott, who's an Afro-Caribbean poet, Nobel laureate who died a number of years ago and wrote very long poems, and this is one of his few short poems called Love After Love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving in your own door, at your own mirror. And each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to yourself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, who you have ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. And you know, when we take our seats, that's the invitation. Metaphorically and literally. So when we take our seats literally, or when we take our seats metaphorically, standing on your head, or, whatever it is, lying on your back, lying on your belly, it's an invitation to feast on your life. What is your life? It's the actuality of this moment. Life expressing itself in this moment. It's not the thought or the story, the narrative, the story of me, starring me. It's this moment. But we have to be here for it 100%. Or we could have a nice time and miss it the whole time because we're too in our heads. That's where take down the photographs, the desperate notes, okay? That's all like thinking, all past, all the stories. It's all true, but it's not the whole truth. And we miss the whole, W-H-O-L-E. And we not just miss the whole, we are the whole. And that's why we need to greet ourselves arriving at our own door. And whether you use the door metaphor or the sitting metaphor, it's the same invitation. You greet yourself arriving. Well, who is you and who is yourself? I mean, where does that dualism even come from? There is no dualism. There's only this. There's just this. And then we fragment it all into our minds and we make me from myself, and then I have to banish myself. And then I have to subjugate consciousness. But then with mutual monarch, how this be? I have to abdicate me from me. Torture. Talk about stress. Talk about pain. Talk about anguish. Talk about ignorance. Talk about self-betrayal. And this is not like Emily Dickinson or Derek Walcott. This is humanity. This is all of us. And we resonate in the ways that we do when we hear these voices making words and putting them together in ways that transcend words. And they're not doing it in sentences, and therefore it goes straight into our hearts in a way that actually can linger and do a certain kind of work. And then that is what, in some sense, can motivate us or invite us to this repast, to sit at the table, to greet ourselves arriving at our own door, to recognize the ways in which we abdicate from ourselves, and to do a certain kind of aikido on that by getting in close and blending and actually utilizing all those forces to drop in right in this moment with things exactly as they are and rest in the boundless spaciousness of the human heart in full awareness. where there's no separation between heart and awareness. And it's way beyond anything you might be thinking. So I think we'll stop here.